Hey guys, welcome to another Mr. O show. As always, I'm your host, Ashton, and this is,
Andy.
and we are here to talk about the one thing that brings together hot sunny days, flamingos, and very beautiful women, and that's Florida.
Yeah.
All right, Andy. So when we're starting to talk about the state, what hits you hard when looking at its past electoral history?
Florida specifically, or just in general of states?
In general, for Florida compared to other states, what about it stands out to you?
It is very, very crucial to the election. Obviously, it is a swing state. That's why we're talking about it. But the difference is that they're not very specific on which party they want to do. So they voted for Barack Obama, they voted for Donald Trump, they voted for George W. Bush. Those are, Republican, Democrat, Republican, respectively. So any kind of candidate can win in Florida. It's very, very much 50-50 in the population. Which way is it going to go? It all depends on the candidate, of course, and what's happening in the recent news and stuff, like current events. But it's just a very, very important state for any kind of presidential win.
hmm So, you know what a bellwether is?
I have heard of it. I cannot, off the top of my head, remember what it is, but I'm sure you know.
Yes. So bellwethers are basically things that give you indication of where something is going. And in elections, especially federal elections, there are some bellwether counties. And if you didn't know this, the most predictive county in America is actually New Mexico, and that one has been right since I think 1952.
A little strange,
But
the New Mexico of all places.
yeah, it's a small county with I think it has like 8,000 voters, and it's been with every winner for the last 50 years. But in Florida, there is a bellwether county with accuracy. I think it's around 90%, and it's the one where Tampa is located near. Uh, I have it right here. Pinellas County. So it's been right 9 times out of 10 in the last 40 years.
90%
So
still an A, so that's a good.
yeah, 90% is pretty good. Not to mention Florida itself is very accurate, especially in recent elections. In its overall history, it's been around 70%. So that's decently accurate on predicting the winner. In the last few elections, clearly it swung the way of the winner. And I think it's probably going to continue that trend for the
Yeah,
future to come.
being in the 70 percentage area is, it's average. It's not the best, but it's not bad either. Florida is important, but also they can predict the winner, so it's important to win Florida. Ashton, I think you should look at some of the results between 2012 and 2016, if you want to just talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing to realize is that Clinton, while she did really good in some of the cities, she underperformed in the Panhandle and some of the rural parts. She underperformed in Central Florida somewhat, especially in the bigger cities on the western part of the coastline, and in the county that holds the Jaguars. Uh, yeah, Jacksonville, she really underperformed, and that's a problem. So she lost by I think 100,000 votes, if I'm remembering that correctly, and Biden has to make up that ground somewhere. So yeah, I would keep an eye on the margins when they come in on election night on the Panhandle. Keep an eye on that Jacksonville, because if that looks bad and that's starting to swing towards Biden, Trump's going to have a bad night in Florida. He has to hold that.
Um,
He has to hold that city, and if he holds that city, then he has a shot. So there's a lot of few things you can look at there to kind of give you indication of how the race is going, at least in the state.
I think if you also look at the differences between 2012 and 2016, respectively, you look at the two maps, and I'll put them up. 2012, you look how well Romney did in his areas that he won. He did not win Florida, of course, but he dominated his counties that he did win for the most part. You look at 2016, Trump didn't win, the counties he won by as big of a margin as Romney did, meaning they weren't as enthusiastic about Trump as they were Romney. Republicans voting for the Republican candidate. That's going to come into play with you have Biden, a Democrat that is. I wouldn't say he's the most charismatic, but he's not very polarizing, meaning you can get behind him if you're leaning either way. Another county to look for, I think, if you look back at Palm Beach, um, Trump flipped that county. That helped him win. You need to see if that goes in Biden's favor or Trump's favor, to win. But right now, I think the polls are pretty good to look at. Ashton, do you want to talk about the polls?
Yes. So right now, at least of this recording, we have a Biden lead of 7, and that is a pretty solid lead. Andy, what does anything stick out to you for the polling, at least in this state?
Um, no, not really. You can see just a national average, even Biden is increasing by the weeks. Um, Florida still is 50-50. If you look, his lead is a good one, but it's still not out of that margin of error, as we talked about in a previous video. If you want to go watch what that is, myths about polls. So it's still anyone's ball game. I wouldn't be, if you're a Democrat or a Biden supporter, if you're like, oh yeah, we got this, it's in the bag. Never think like that. It could change. But for now, Biden's got a lead, and the polls are saying that he's got a lead right now.
Yeah, and just for people's reference, Hillary Clinton did not have the final RCP average. The final RCP average was at Trump, and the polls were only off by 0.8 in Florida. So the
Very, very cool.
polling in Florida, it's typically heavily polled. The polling there is typically more solid. I would say at this time, I'm actually looking at it right now. This time in 2016, you had the polling was between Clinton getting a lead, Trump having 5. Like the polling in Florida for 2016 was very bad in the sense that it was all over the place.
Yeah,
Like
back
you can say Trump plus 5 next week, it would be Clinton plus 6, then Clinton plus 1, Clinton plus 5. You kind of see it wasn't stable. I
that's
will
that's what
remind people for this race, it is a lot more stable. Like the only poll in the last few weeks to have Trump have decent numbers is a Republican insider poll. So
Yeah,
it's
I think that just speaks to the volumes of last election in 2016, how disfavored both the candidates were. Both were historically, I wouldn't say hated, but disliked among just the people in general. I'm not saying everyone disliked them that voted for them, but it was nothing like this year where Biden has a lot of people that support him and is not as disfavored as Clinton was. That was
well, I think my point is more it's a less influx race. It's more stable. It's less of like a roller coaster ride on who's winning, who's losing every week, especially in state polling.
Yeah, but let's move on to one of my favorite things to talk about in any state, and that is the major industries. I love talking about them. It really shapes on, the ideologies of the people and the beliefs of the people that live there, and who they want to vote for most of the time. Kicking off our major industry list in Florida is tourism. No shock there. Florida is a destination vacation hub. I mean,
Mhm.
it's 126 million tourists in 2018 alone. I mean, it is a huge hub for that. Estimated 1.3 million jobs are from tourism, contributes almost 86 billion to the state's GDP, and it's home to 20 theme parks, including, of course, Disney World, SeaWorld, and Universal Studios. Now, it's hard to choose specifically who tourism favors in the state of Florida. It's tough to pick the candidate that it leans towards. It's tricky for me. I would probably lead towards Biden as of right now, but it's close. Ashton, do you have a difference of opinion there?
Uh, I would say it's definitely a lean Biden, but it's more of like a 55-45 type deal. It's if it's anything, it's a very minuscule advantage.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. But let's move on to an industry that's 100% for Trump. For any reason why, but for Trump 100%, that is agriculture. I mean,
Hmm.
agriculture in Florida is huge, just like tourism. 1.4 million jobs from this industry, 131 billion in the state GDP. One fun fact from Florida is that it gets 100 to 200 days more of a growing season than any other state. So that's why it's so high in agriculture in Florida with this increased growing season. Their main crops are oranges, tomatoes, dairy, and sugarcane. 70% of the country's citrus, 95% of the country's orange production, and 90% of their orange juice supply comes from Florida. It is the orange state, of course. It's in a lot of their license plates. And they're second for flowers and second in the U.S. for fresh vegetables. The flowers are in Miami is a huge port for that, for the trade of flowers, both internationally and domestic. So, like I said, our agriculture favors Trump. Ashton, any differences of opinion?
No, no, that's pretty common sense. They've stuck with him since 2015.
Yeah, yeah. Moving on to the last industry we're going to talk about for Florida in this video, and that is aerospace and aviation. If you think of Florida, a lot of times you think of NASA, of course. 175 billion in GDP. Now, when I say aerospace and aviation, I'm not just talking about spaceships. I'm also talking about planes, which is why 10% of the nation's total passengers come out of a Florida hub or airport. Over 2,000 different aviation companies are located in Florida, and they employ over 100,000 employees and of Floridians. And of course, like I said earlier, NASA and Cape Canaveral is huge for the state. I mean, very history-riven state. So shockingly, I would think the aerospace and aviation industry in Florida kind of favors Trump as of late. As you know, you look at the recent SpaceX launch as an example of how grateful they were towards Trump there. I think it favors Trump. Ashton, do you have any differences of opinion there?
Oh, yes, I would put it as a tie. I feel like the aviation industry has just taken a big hit because of coronavirus. The response has, let's say, leave something to really be desired with the administration and how the governor has kind of been lax and they're seeing a big spike now. So I believe some of that will kind of fairly or not fairly blow back onto the administration.
Yeah,
No pun intended.
we'll see how it shakes out with the election. Real quick, just some major companies that are headquartered in Florida. They have 19 of the 2019 Fortune 500 companies, which include Publix, CSX, the railroad company, and Office Depot. So those are the three main ones that are probably more recognized than the other ones that they have. So let's get into the demographics of Florida, down to the nitty gritty of who are these people that live in Florida, these crazy Florida people. Ashton, I think you've heard of this fun game that's on the internet now that all you have to do is type in your birthday and Florida man, and you get some crazy story of a Florida man eating a gator and then robbing a bank or something like that. So that's a fun game if you guys at home want to go do that. Like I said, birthday and Florida man, and just see and let us know in the comments what you get. That'll be fun to see. But getting into the demographics of the state, they have 21.48 million people that live there. That's the best estimate as they can give. Looking at the population pyramid that's up on your screen now, it's an older state than states we've covered before. The average median age is 42 across both genders, 40.3 for male, 43.5 for female. So it is an older state. Of course, Florida is known for being the retirement state, as some people would call it. So they are a little bit older, which shows why sometimes it can go either way. Because if you can dive into that old population, it will help you win the election. But the influx, if you look at the 25-year-old age group, that's the influx of, you have the immigrants, the Latinos that are coming in influxes into Florida, especially Miami, that is shaping the way Florida will be in the next 20, 30, 40 years. So it's going to be a very different state then. It'll be interesting to see how it turns out then. If you look at the Florida race demographics now up on your screen, it is 53.2% white, 16.9% African American, about 26% Hispanic, 3% Asian, and only 0.5% of Native American. And then the Florida religious demographic breakdown, Christians are about 70%, non-religious 24, and then 6% non-Christian faith, so like Muslims or Jewish faith. Ashton, anything really strike you about Florida?
For a swing state, especially since the ones we've been talking about, it's a way more diverse state, which makes it a little bit more trickier for the coalition Trump has been
Yeah.
kind of basing his election on. So that's just one observation, and I would say the Hispanic vote is key.
Yeah.
If Trump can get at least 45% of that, he's golden. And same thing with Biden. If Biden can get 60-70% of that, he should be good.
Yeah, but Ashton, I think it's time for our little desk calls of if you were getting the call to predict who wins Florida on election night. Ashton, you're picking up. Who do you pick to win Florida?
Well, I think I think their polls close around 9, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm guessing by 11:30 it'll be called for Joe Biden. I think he's going to have a decently sized victory. I would like to point out to the coronavirus, I feel like the spike there is going to hurt him like it has states that have already experienced it. I also think his comments about the Venezuela dictator, the Cubans will not like that, and that is somewhat a more favorable Latino population than you would see in other states like Nevada, Arizona, and California. So the Cuban population has been relatively like split between Republican and Democrat. I think that's going to kind of remember him talking about a dictator so favorably that way. So that's my reasoning, and that's what I think will happen.
Nice, nice.
If you told me pre-pandemic who would win, I would have said Trump. So.
All right. But for me, if I was the one picking up the phone call, who am I picking on election night? It's very close right now. It's a hard decision for me to pick. If you look at our last month's, or this month's, last month now, because just now turned July, our June election map predictions, I had Trump winning that state. Now, so it's a very tough decision for me to pick Trump or Biden for Florida. I know what the polls are saying, the leading Biden. Margin of error still is in the play, and I don't want to, 100% just disregard the polls. But personal opinion, I am choosing, as of right now, Donald Trump to win Florida. It's going to be close. I think if he wins, it's going to be below 0.5%. I mean, it's going to be very close. It's either he's going to win like that, or he's going to lose by more than 1%. Those are, in my opinion, the two options. But we'll see. As of right now, I pick Trump, but it's a very, very fluid situation right now. You know how things are
Mm-hmm.
going. The coronavirus is changing now. It's spiking again. You still have the protests that are happening and and we don't know exactly how schools are going to look and how things will look in the fall as sports are supposed to come back. How will that happen? So we will see how all this will happen in the coming months.
Well, Andy, we are closer to election day than January 1st. Away from January 1st. It's flying,
Crazy.
flying by.
It is crazy. This year has just been one crazy year, and it's not the best way to start out the decade. But guys, we hope last weekend you guys had a great 4th of July. If you celebrated it, if not, that's everyone's got their own opinion on what they want to do. But if you did, we hope you were safe, both with the virus and just if you did fireworks, of course. But we hope you had a great 4th of July. We're looking to make great more content on this channel. We have some ideas in the mix for the upcoming weeks. We're not entirely sure what yet. We will let you guys know when that comes out. But that does it for this video, Ashton. And guys, we hope you have a good day and stay safe.